there are people outside of Canada who are trying to influence us, and it seems to me from what's happening right now is they're influencing us more than we are our own selves.
Well, folks, you never know who you're going to meet at a loony leftist protest here at Nathan Phillips Square, and I'm very happy to be with Greg Renouf. He used to be part of this side, the side of madness, the side of progressive Marxism, and then I guess at one point you saw the light, Greg, and you went to the other side, and in the meantime, these people here, they did everything they could to destroy your life, didn't they?
Pretty much, yeah. Now, I figured them out about 5 days before our Occupy started. A week into organizing, they started talking about the violence and the F the police, and it's all the same social problems that they're causing, not fixing.
You know, that narrative has maintained. It's only gotten worse. Greg, can you give me some insight? I am so happy to reach out to all these people with their pretty umbrellas and cardboard signs trying to advocate abolishing or defunding the police. And yet when I ask for an interview, I'm snubbed. I receive profanity. In certain cases, violence. Why can't members of these Marxist-led organizations articulate their viewpoints?
I guess it would take all day, partially, but they're really what they're doing here is they need a enemy, right? If we're going to have a social movement, we need to have someone to fight. We can't fight the government anymore because the politicians are in the social movement, so we fight the police. But then we come to a protest like this, they chase me down just like they chase you. I watched you 2 years ago again throwing a bottle of urine at your head, just over here. You are a needed enemy. They need something real. I lived in Russia after the fall of the wall, and I've traveled to many countries around the world where people genuinely suffer and have problems. And we don't really have that many problems in Canada. What's a bad Canada today? The TTC didn't work? Which is bad.
And yet, with all due respect, though, Greg, if we didn't have our security detail and there wasn't a brigade of police officers there, I have zero doubt the fisticuffs would be flying right now just with this motley crew that's gathered around us.
Absolutely. This is actually one of the reasons I headed back over here right now, because they were just following me and I wasn't protected by anyone. There are churches who've been involved in fights against the police for a very long time, Anabaptist churches. If you look in Toronto at who's leading the tent movement, it's a Mennonite preacher named Doug Hatlam. Doug...
And that's the item we covered at George Hislop Park, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's their church sanctuary, which is a Mennonite operation to help the homeless. Just a good job, a good thing to do. But they're using it to radicalize and create problems. But the Mennonite church, particularly Doug's angle of it, has been saying abolish the police for 100 years now, since they came here.
If any nefarious individual were to do something bad to them, who would they call for protection if the police are abolished?
And half the time I come to protest and they attack me, they go right into the police saying that I'm causing problems.
So they want it both ways.
Yeah, both ways. I watched your video, what happened here in front of City Hall a few days ago, when the City Hall security came and they asked you to leave. It's markedly different when it happened 7 years ago, when I was here inside City Hall in front of Mayor Rob Ford's office, when OCAP, many of the people here behind today's protests, were standing in front of the mayor's office protesting. They tried to create a fuss to get me thrown out. There's a great video I have of the Toronto security guard saying, you can't do that, he has the right to be here.
What has changed? And by the way, OCAP, for those who don't know, that's the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. These are people, Greg, going back to the 90s, they would bring backpacks filled with marbles because if the police mounted unit came, they would throw the marbles. Hopefully, in their opinion, a horse would break a leg. You'd have to put it down. Wonder how that plays out with the PETA arm of the anarchists. But essentially, in the here and now, why is it so different in 7 years? Is this on Mayor John Tory?
I have a hard time saying that, but you know what? It might be. About 4 years ago, I was here in City Hall when Tory and members of City Council gave a race relations award to Black Lives Matter Toronto.
Usra Kogali.
Usra Kogali, who was on the stage with them getting this reward.
Who has a history of racist remarks.
Usra Kogali wrote poetry that said white people are subhuman.
Yes.
Now, I was in that City Hall watching in the rotunda the city councilors praising and giving a race relations award to Usra Kogali.
That's right.
I'll send you the link to the video I took a few days ago.
I know of it. Oh, okay, go ahead.
I walked around City Hall and I talked to every city councilor I could find. And I said, hey, did you know you just gave a race relations award to a woman who says white people are subhuman? And they all said, oh, really? Well, I have to look into that. Pam McConnell, who's passed away now, probably the only honest one of the bunch, she said, yes, but she's lovely. And I appreciate that she sees that. But I got John Tory in the elevator. I said, hey, I've got something important for you. You just gave a race relations award to a woman who says white people are subhuman. What do you have to say about that? He said, oh, I'll look into that. And then what happens? Next year they give another award to the people,
Incredible. Greg, exit question. Are we at peak insanity right now? Or do you think things are going to get even worse?
10 years ago, I would have said we're at peak insanity, but it seems to be getting worse all the time. But the thing to remember about all this is that there's a lot more worse going on in the world than what's happening here. This is kind of a...
Why make this part of the world like that part of the world?
Good question. It could be to slow us down. And if you look at the organizations from outside of Canada who are supporting this movement here, I've seen Russia Today having a very special interest in the Antifa protests here in front of City Hall. I've seen the anarchists in the Unistoten camp in BC and in the East Coast anti-oil protests. It was funded by Al Jazeera to do anarchist documentaries about these people. There's a lot of, why would you want to do that? Personally, I think there are people outside of Canada who are trying to influence us, and it seems to me from what's happening right now is they're influencing us more than we are our own selves.
And, the irony is so profound, Greg, because when we're at, normal protests with normal people, whenever I speak to somebody from the former Soviet Union, from former East Bloc nations, such as Poland, Hungary, what have you, they are the most vociferous when it comes to standing up for free speech. But it seems that we have a generation or two born here where it's completely normalized and even cool to wear T-shirts saying CCCP or an image of Che Guevara. But they've never lived under communism classic, have they?
Yeah, they weren't in East Europe when the wall fell. And I was in the middle of Hungary and Czech and Germany, and the celebration and the freedom and the relief, oh my, we're free. All these people felt. And you walk around Toronto, which is like, if there's a human being that's ever been more privileged than any human being on the face of the earth, it's the Canadian.
You're right. We are living in a privileged society, but it should be noted that you shouldn't be getting things handed to you on a silver platter. I think in Canada, I think in the United States, you work hard, you obey the law, you make something of your life, and you'll be able to enjoy in that privilege. But these people, they talk about systemic racism, but they're about systemic anarchy. They're about tearing everything down, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, half of them are about the party. The other half of them are about the NDP party or the Green Party. But it's just, I've lived in Russia and Hungary after the wall fell, and I talked to lots of people who went through a lot of bad stuff. And they had real pains to fight against, and they had real things to do. I have a friend whose father was a revolutionary in South Africa against the apartheid. He had something to care about and something to really do, right? He couldn't sit at a bloody restaurant. There's nothing to be angry about here. There's very little. And the things that we are angry about are so minor that I think this energy has to go somewhere. And right now people are harnessing it to use for their political means.
Well, Greg, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. And there you have it. This is a very brave man, ladies and gentlemen. I would argue he has as many enemies here on this square as we do. And what's that old Edmund Burke quote? The only thing necessary for evil to thrive is for good men to do nothing. Thank you for coming on camera and weighing in on your opinions, Greg. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Well, folks, as you just saw, there are forces afoot that don't want us to cover certain stories. Desmond Cole can just tell the mainstream media to turn their cameras off and they'll comply, but we don't do that here at The Rebel. we serve a higher standard, I think, when it comes to telling the truth. So if you can, please go to journalistdefensefund.com, journalistdefensefund.com,